Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. I know it's lunchtime, so really appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to talk about differentiating your applications with Amazon QuickSight. My name is Jose Knucklejohn. I lead product for QuickSight. Speaking with me today will be Jeroen Minnaert, who leads data at Showpad, and Devin Mills, who is head of data analytics and reporting at Guardian Life. So in today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can accelerate your growth with embedded analytics. We will speak about some of the challenges that we've seen as AWS customers face as they look at the whole notion of embedded analytics. We'll talk about Amazon QuickSight Embedded, why that fits into this need that customers have. We'll go through a quick demo for you to understand what embedded analytics can do for your applications. And then we'll hear from Showpad and then from Guardian Life about their journey with QuickSight and with embedded analytics. And then we'll talk about a few options you have to partner with us that can accelerate this journey. So let's start off with, what are we trying to do here? Forrester estimates that in 2008, there were about 10,000 software vendors. In 2018, that number grew tenfold to about 100,000. And a recent study from Canalys estimates that there are about 175,000 ISVs out there. So these are software providers in one form or the other providing software services to customers. Now, if you think about the number of apps that are out there, the number is estimated by IDC to be about 500 million. That's a lot of apps. But if you think about the fact that everything that you do today has an app, every business function has an app, there is a SaaS vendor of some form that provides services to you. And at the same time, you have multiple countries. Each country has its own ecosystem. So there's a lot out there. Now, the big question is, if you are either a product manager or an engineering manager or a developer, startup founder, how do you differentiate yourself in this busy world? There's so many options for customers out there. How do you make sure that your particular application stands out? And to make things worse, it's not like there isn't any data. Each of these applications produces data. Now, that data could be about the transaction that you're kind of executing on it. It could be about the things that are happening when you do the transaction. For the person who is operating the app, it could be about the customer journey. Where does the user go within the app? There's always the backend logs of this, which might be interesting in some form. So there's a lot of information here. But what does the end consumer or the customer of that application do with it? It's always a big question mark. And it's not like you can't do anything with this data, as consumer applications have shown. So all of you have been here at re:Invent. You've been walking around. There's a lot of steps that you've been taking. If you look at your phone, your watch, it's going to tell you that, hey, your exercise activity was increased, or maybe it's less than for some of you who are extremely active. But the point being that it gives you a trend. It gives you the view of what today was, and it gives you a sense of what's happening. Now, the same is applicable for business applications as well. So when you think about a business application, the same kind of insights would work wonders for customers. But we've seen that when software vendors try to introduce applications, there are a few different blockers out there. So I call them blockers because you start to think about it, and then some of these things come up, and then the whole project either gets canned or, hey, we'll get to it slowly. So one of them is budget and resources. So the first thought that comes to mind is, I'm already building an application. Why don't I just build analytics? And what happens quickly is that as you think about what is needed, it's not just the data on the back end. You have to produce insights. And from the insights, you have to put them in a consumable form, especially in a world where the level of the bar on UX has gone up. Consumers want, and customers want, an experience that's fluid, that has drill downs, filters, and all these things that they're used to from analytics. That means it's a lot of work, and then slowly teams start saying, hey, let's hold on that. We've got to build the main product first. Now, the next option becomes, why don't I go ahead and add in an embedded analytics option? So here, the question becomes, OK, that costs a bunch of money. Where do I get this bunch of money? And I need approvals and so on. Second is, OK, you've chosen an embedded analytics provider. What's next? You have to build and take it to market. That involves a number of steps, building, deploying servers, and going forward with that. So there's time involved. And then the third piece comes when you've launched it. There's always a question of managing scale. So you want to roll this out. This is not, rolling out to 100 users. Applications have thousands of users. Applications have multiple tenants. Each time you win a big contract in or get a big customer on board, suddenly you find that, what, I need to scale. That becomes all about scale, expenses, and how do you manage all of that. Now let's dive a little deeper into that first point, which is it becomes sometimes too expensive to start. Some of these are high-risk investments because you're talking about adding analytics, maybe not a core functional area. You have to build UX. Questions like this come up in, hey, how much of money do we spend on this? How much of time do we spend on this? You got to convince a lot of internal stakeholders. And then you have to think about the resource constraints, not just in terms of hardware, physical resources, but in terms of budget, of course, but also humans. Because it takes a lot of effort to build this. And the question is, how much of effort will you devote to managing and building a third-party system that you've just adopted? And there's a little cycle here, and many of you will be familiar with this. Your customers are asking for data and insights. Okay, so then you go and convince your team leaders and the people around the company that you need to introduce insights. You get approvals for budgets. Okay, great. Now you go and talk to a number of embedded analytics vendors, get RFPs, go through POCs. Once you go through POCs, then you have to do load testing because you are not deploying this to a small company. You're deploying it as part of an application. So scalability matters. What happens if one day some customer spikes in usage? What happens? All of that needs to be considered. And then you have to negotiate a contract, sign a multi-year agreement, get IT to deploy servers, install software, and then you build the actual embedded analytics solution. So we're going through this process, and you can see why it takes time. And then, of course, there's the whole concept of multi-tenancy, which is unique when you start thinking about software in an application. You have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of customers. Within each customer, there are tens, hundreds of thousands of users. How do you build for this? How do you scale for this? And then finally, you've built all of this. If sometimes I've seen customers use solutions in many different ways. Sometimes you even have a server per customer. So imagine the number of servers you have, the number of software updates you need to do in that case. And then you have to deliver analytics to the customer. Great, everybody's happy. Then what happens is either your complexity of dashboards goes up because you introduce a new feature, users start liking it, they start using more, or you just increase the number of users. So one of these three dimensions starts to increase, and then you see performance issues. Then you have to call in IT. IT helps. The team of engineers that you have to administer, they help. But then again, you have to spend more time on it. Then sometimes you need more licenses. Sometimes you need more servers. So there's a whole cycle in here that just takes too long and makes it too expensive. You also have the notion of people wanting different formats. So many applications today have analytics built for years. So many of you have those. People have, extracts, CSV extracts, files that are delivered to customers on a periodic schedule. That format has existed for a long time. PDF files and other paginated PDF files have been a common form of consumption that exists. Some applications have BI dashboards. Some consumers want natural language query. So there's a mix of formats here. Sometimes what happens is you introduce multiple applications or multiple solutions for each. Now you have to manage each of these. You have to manage servers, manage contracts. And then again, the question of how do you govern data across this? There's multiple data security items that you need to manage, each unique to the product or the solution that you're deploying. And then finally, there's the question of scaling. So demand is never linear because you have the winter and summer. Some industries, winter is busy. Some industries, summer is busy. It's always across the board. Traditional on-premise world, you had a set of servers, so you would either have under capacity or over capacity. In the cloud world, you are moving servers to the cloud, but that still means that you have like a step function. So you're still under or over capacity, but it's better than before. But then all of these just mean that you have a number of issues from the formats that people need, scaling, and all of those in order to roll out embedded analytics to your customers. So that's where we introduce QuickSight and QuickSight's capabilities. QuickSight is unified BI for all your analytics needs. When we say unified BI, we mean that if you need interactive dashboards, if you need visualizations, if you need paginated reports, or if you need natural language query for your users, just different formats, They're all available in QuickSight, and they're all available for your customers. You can build experiences fast. QuickSight does not have clients or servers. It means that you just take QuickSight, build stuff, and then roll it out. QuickSight takes care of it. You get consistently high performance because this is serverless. QuickSight is built on AWS. You don't have to manage anything. As you have 10 users, it works fine. If you have 10,000, it works fine and just keeps scaling from there. And of course, you have consumption-based pricing available, which means that you have lower costs. If your users are not using it very much, your costs are low. If your users are using it a lot, it scales with you. Now, QuickSight also provides support for a wide variety of use cases because embedding is not about adding a dashboard to your application. You could, of course, add interactive dashboards that provide a full analytical view of the data. That means that you are able to slice and dice the data, filter it, interactive filters, action filters, things that would normally take a whole bunch of time to build are available out of the box for you. You have insightful visuals that you can embed. So if you have a key KPI or trend, so imagine your banking application. Every time you log in, it's giving you a summary of your balances. It's giving you a trend of your spend, of your last 30 days. All of that can be QuickSight visualizations that you simply embed. You don't have to embed a dashboard, just a visualization. You can embed Q. So you added visualizations, you added dashboards, but your users want to go deeper. They want to ask questions about the data. You can add Q. And then you have paginated reports. So again, you might have a line item statement of everything that has happened over the last 30 days that you want to provide as a PDF or as a downloadable CSV. QuickSight gets it for you, runs it in the cloud. You don't have to worry about infrastructure, scaling, nothing. QuickSight gets it for you with headers, footers, custom logos, all of that. And then you have dashboard authoring. So you will always have power users within your customers. So the way we've seen it is you have tens of thousands of customers with hundreds of thousands of users. Within those tens of thousands of customers, there's always like 1, 2, 3, a handful of users who would really like to go at the data. Now, you can let them have the power of a full-fledged BI tool within your application. And then, of course, there might be situations where you have just public dashboards that you want to roll out with trends, with just information that you want to share with customers. It could also be just a portal that you have within your intranet. So there's a number of use cases here. Now, all of that is great, but it's not great if you have to do a whole bunch of work for it. So that's where we make it easy for you with a number of constructs that are available out of the box. So to start with, if you are embedding QuickSight, we've got one-click embedding, which means that you go build a dashboard in QuickSight. You can copy-paste a snippet just like you do for a YouTube video, put it into your application just to see how that looks like. How will a visual look here? How will a dashboard look here? And then we've got a set of APIs. We've got a comprehensive JavaScript SDK that lets you connect the dashboard or the visual to your application. So you can pass messages in, you can know what's going on, so on. You also have a full set of APIs in terms of managing provisioning and such. We just launched our expanded API capabilities for dashboards with which you can programmatically create dashboards. So a whole suite all through the AWS SDK. And then you have fine-grained customizations because you want these to look like your application. You don't want this to look like a clunky BI tool that's just put into place in your application. You want these to look nice. You want the colors to be the same. You want fonts. You want a bunch of things. So that's where we have templates which allow you to customize and reuse certain dashboard formats. You plug in the data. You plug in themes separately. And themes as a construct which allow you to specify the colors and other items that you want to apply to these dashboards. And then, of course, multi-tenancy is a big deal when you're thinking about embedding into applications. We offer native constructs. So we offer row-level security and column-level security, as well as what we call namespaces to ensure that users are isolated from each other when they have data in QuickSight. And that's particularly relevant when you're trying to do this across organizations. So going back to the earlier example, if you have 10,000 customers, you do want 10,000 namespaces within which each of those customers' users reside. Now, constructs are great, but you need building blocks to build the experiences you want. So that's where QuickSight has a number of building blocks in there. We talked about dashboards. That's probably what you're all familiar with. But picking the visualizations from a dashboard and embedding, that's an option. Great for your landing pages, great for exactly where your users are going to take actions. So it's like, hey, these many actions have happened. Would you like to do yes, no? That's a great place for a visual. ML insights. So we've got anomaly detection, we've got forecasting, we've got a number of ML-powered capabilities. You don't have to know ML. If you have SageMaker data in the backend, that's great, you can integrate it. But otherwise, QuickSight lets you run anomaly detection just as a business user, as a developer. It also lets you add forecasts with a click, ML-powered forecasting. All of this can, again, be embedded into your application. Paginated reporting, again, we talked about it, but CSV files, PDF files with multiple pages with all of the data, big ask from many customers, you can do that with QuickSight. And Q, when you add natural language query to your application, you're almost sending a signal to your users that, I'm not sticking with what's current, I am adding the latest capabilities that I can integrate into this. You can ask questions directly, you don't have to do any manual slicing, dicing of data. And then, of course, the full-fledged authoring for users who need it. So power users appreciate the fact that they can look at the data and really drill down to the bottom and build the visuals the way that they want. You can also let them share it with other users in the organization. We have constructs that allow you to do that. And so you've built your application, and you've deployed it, but you want to scale it. So with QuickSight, there are no servers. So once you build, you deploy it, you embed it, and then you go. You can start with 10 users, go to 10,000, and the same, QuickSight follows what you need, both on the front end, but also on the back end. So QuickSight has what is called Spice. It's an in-memory engine that automatically scales to your needs. Whether you have 1,000 concurrent users or 10,000, Spice will automatically scale on the back end to take care of it. Spice provides fast slice and dice capabilities for analytics, end-user analytics. And earlier this week, we just upped Spice capacity to 1 billion rows of data per data set. So that's data that you can store for your users, and you can use multiple Spice tables with 1 billion rows and present data to your users. Of course, there is no software patching, no management, nothing involved. You deploy and you scale. Now, we talked about multi-tenancy, and that's an important construct that comes up in this context. So with multi-tenancy, you have multiple customers and users within them. The easiest way to do this is to have a dashboard, and then you can apply row-level or column-level securities to the dashboard, to the data, so that each user only sees the data that they're supposed to see. Now, you can always create assets per customer, per tenant. It's always an architectural choice that certain customers make. And then, of course, you can also have assets that you can hand out to your users in a very governed fashion, so that they can then slice and dice the data. We talked about authoring, we talked about Q. They have access to the data, but it's data that's only pertinent to them. So this way, you can really do multi-tenancy with QuickSight using the constructs inside without having to wrangle certain things out of the product. And then, of course, another big part of scaling is how much can you automate it? Because you're developing this, you want this to be programmatic. You want most actions to be just available in some programmatic fashion. And with QuickSight, we have APIs to create a QuickSight account, APIs to provision users, APIs to create a data connection, APIs to create a data set, APIs to create a dashboard now. And so the flexibility of these APIs is all available through the AWS SDK, means that you can pick your language of choice, you can create all these actions, and then you can manage these just like you do software code. With the latest capabilities of for dashboard and analysis APIs, what you can actually also do is make sure that whenever you have a change in your dashboard or even your data set, you always track that, just like you do code reviews for regular software code. Now, to put it all together in context, let's go ahead and take a look at a demo that puts it in the context of an application. So we look at a sales application where sellers, in this case, you have two sellers, one who is looking after specific regions of EMEA and APJ, and the other one who's looking after the global sales. So in this case, the user clicks in. They're in the application. You can see that we've added visuals, which give you a quick view of the highlights. So you can look at it as a user, understand what's going on. There's a dashboard that shows you details, includes forecasting, includes tables. The tables include the download option, so that if you wanted to export this as a CSV, you can do that. You can always remove that option as well. You've got visuals that have drill downs. So if you wanted to provide just out-of-the-box drill downs, that's always possible. There's interactive filtering. You click on a data point, it can filter your dashboard. Or you have regular drop-down filters with which you can filter Now, the key thing being it matches the application. It feels like it's one experience. Now, if you wanted to provide more insights, there's always Q, and Q is integrated here. There are a set of questions that are frequently asked that are just included. So when you click on that, it gets you the answer, but you can, of course, type your own question. In this case, the user, because he's in charge of EMEA and APJ, they're just able to go ahead and type EMEA, APJ, show me blah in EMEA, and then it filters it down. It shows you that result in seconds. So the whole deal being that with Q, you're adding that layer on top so that this person doesn't have to go and call up the BI team or the software team to find out, hey, my application provider, when is this version coming? So this is a global lead, so you're finding more data in there than before. So you just see that there is more data here. The numbers are different because the views are different. Dashboards exist, but again, there's more data compared to the previous user. But you also have, in this case, self-service capabilities. So in this case, there is, in a product, you can imagine this to be a different tier, but the intent being that you can now go and look at data sets that have been provided to the user. You can take out the ability to add any more data so that you're providing a very governed set of tables or data sets in this case. That user can then go and create dashboards from it. So those dashboards can, each customer will have certain things that matter more to them, so they can go and create those views without having to wait for the application provider to go and introduce new dashboards, add new visuals, add new filters, all of the capabilities that you would expect in a BI tool. It's all in there. It's all packaged, and it's all something that you can deliver to your customers. So overall, it provides a way for you to take data, take analytics, and then present it to users in a format that really matters to them, just as they want to make decisions. Now, how does this matter to the business overall? What we've seen is that there are ways in which this really adds value to the existing products. So you can see that if you add analytics, the existing customer experience just amplifies. You can unlock new potential because there are many cases where data was previously inaccessible to end users. So you can go ahead and put out public portals with data if you're a government organization. There are places where, for example, spend of school districts is something that's always something people ask about, but it's always difficult to put that out there in a very consumable format. So again, this helps. New product offerings. There are many customers who've created data products on AWS. When you add embedded analytics into the mix, it provides a very usable, user-friendly interface through which these data products can be consumed. So as an application developer, as a product manager, as an engineering person, this just provides you so many options so quickly to unlock new value. And QuickSight also lets you do this really quickly. Sign up for QuickSight. You build and deliver analytics, meaning you create a dashboard, connect your data sources, of course, do all that, create a dashboard, publish it, and then you're able to put it out to users really quickly. You don't have to sign a big contract. You can roll this out in days, and then you pay for what you consume, so you can very well roll it out to 10 users, see what the feedback is. It's only a couple of $100. You understand what that means to you. Is this something we want to go forward? We don't want to go forward. Do we need more tweaks? Do we want to include more features? All of that is in your hands. And then you auto scale. So when you want to roll out, move from 10 to 10,000 and so on, it's easy. You don't have to do anything special. So we also brought here some screenshots from our partners who've implemented this. For example, this is a dashboard powered by QuickSight within a warehousing application used by thousands of users. They look at this to make decisions about what's going on in the warehouse, what should I do next, and so on. This is in a different context. This is HR performance metrics, again, inside an application, providing value to the users, to the HR users in this case. Thousands of customers embed QuickSight today, and they use this in very different industries for very different things. So to give you a slice of that, give you a view of that, let me introduce Yaron to talk about how they did this at Showpad.
Everyone hear me? All right, cool, great. So my name is Jeroen. I am head of data at Showpad. And like Joe said, I just want to take you through the exciting progress that we've made with QuickSight in the last year. So taking a step back, what is Showpad? Showpad tries to solve the problem that a lot of sellers have today in the industry. So this notion that they're missing basic knowledge, content, and tools to engage with their buyers and accelerate revenue. So with a company like Showpad, we enable or we provide a sales enablement platform that serves video analytics, video messaging. It serves guided content to help these sellers accelerate their revenue, engage with buyers, and drive success. Today, Showpad is about 500 to 600 employees, and as we're going towards our $100 million annual recurring revenue mark, we're serving about 1,300 customers in about 50 countries. And we do that with one open SaaS platform that's powering about 3.2 million buyer interactions, and that's resulting in sales and marketing collaboration improvement of about 25%. And Showpad is all in on AWS. So that means that today we're using about 80 services, and for the people paying attention at lunchtime, these are the actual services that we're using. But the thing you can also see is that big purple set of icons on top. And most of them, not all of them, but most of them represent the data analytics services that we're using today at Showpad. We didn't get there just like that. It was 2 years of hard work to get over some of these challenges. So I want to take you through some of the challenges that we've had at Showpad, the first one being about data quality. So one thing that we've seen consistently is this notion that our data wasn't fresh enough to be trusted to make decisions. And on top of that, we saw a lack of ownership, such that the data that we had couldn't be explained. We didn't know what the definitions were, and so forth and so on. So when it came down to use data for making decisions, we ultimately relied on instinct and anecdotes instead of using that data to power the decisions we wanted to make. The second challenge we had was the challenge regarding access. So traditionally, what you see in a lot of industries, a lot of companies, is just getting access to data, having to go through difficult permissions and processes to get access. What we also had was, in our case, just access to BI. Making sure that you get access to defaults was a very big problem. You had to go through, again, a sign-up flow, and that today also changed. And another thing is just this notion of training. Everyone is comfortable analyzing data, so training your organization and making sure that they can use that data to make sufficient decisions was also a problem that we had. Thirdly, we saw fragmentation. So fragmentation in terms of where our data came from. We had multiple data sources, for example, multiple sources of truth. We also had a fragmented data model, meaning that we had multiple definitions for that data depending on where you were looking at. And finally, we also had a very fragmented tooling landscape. So think about multiple BI solutions, think about multiple ways to use and analyze that data. So in 2021, we said, okay, let's fix this, right? Let's do something about this. Let's set forward a future where we accelerate Showpad's data maturity by mindfully applying and utilizing technology. And what that means is let's use some of the advantages that something like AWS has with all the services that they offer, but mindfully apply them to our organization. So it's tailor-made for our employees, for the company, and for our customers. And to make that happen, we focused on 3 things. We said, first of all, let's bring our data together. Let's unify that in something like a data lake. Let's then focus on driving autonomy. Let's focus on making sure that we can democratize data access. But let's do all of these things in the light of innovation. Let's just not do them for the sake of things. Let's focus all these efforts on making sure that the business processes that we have are innovated on, and that ultimately customers are happier because they're seeing more intelligence in their products. And so the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk a bit about how QuickSight played a role in this. Because QuickSight is a very important technology in unifying our data and also making it easy to access that data and democratizing intelligence. So there's a couple of reasons why we picked QuickSight, and I'll start off with the easy one, right? It natively integrates with Amazon. It natively integrates with AWS and all the services it offers. And this is huge, right? It's not just from a cost of ownership perspective or a simplicity perspective. It also means to our customers that we're not moving data around from Amazon to an external service, for example. So this is huge. The other thing that this is enabling is it allowed us to use our data mesh architecture and our data lake effectively together with QuickSight. So we could use technologies like Athena and lake formation to make that data available without any overhead. Thirdly, We also love that QuickSight just focuses on visualizations. Just like Joe showed, there's not a lot of complexity with respect to QuickSight. You're not dealing with data transformations and data modeling in QuickSight. And that makes it very, very easy because you can focus those places, those transformations, outside of QuickSight in places where they make sense. So your data becomes more portable, and you can't just use it for analytics, but you can also use it for something like machine learning. It also means one single source of truth for our customers. It's one single place for our customers and our internal users, our employees, to go to analyze and discover what data can do for them. And I actually want to take this a step further. We've taken this notion, or we've looked at this notion from idea to smile of the customer. And what we mean by that is we allow every employee to come up with, to basically first go to QuickSight, think about the business questions, refine that into an analysis, into a story, and then scale that out to customers. And I'll talk a bit more in detail about that in the next couple of slides. And finally, Joe's mentioned it already as well. There we go. It's serverless, right? It's a serverless cost model. So for us, it means that we can scale demand. It means when there's a lot of usage, like at the end of a quarter, we can gradually increase the cost, but we can also gradually lower the cost when there's less demand. So the next couple of slides, I want to highlight two things. I want to highlight the data mesh compatibility, because that's quite unique. But I also want to highlight that notion from idea to smile of the customer. So let's talk about data mesh. Taking a step back, I know you probably heard data mesh a number of times already, but for us, data mesh is an architectural concept. And it's this notion that producers can provide curated data to an organization, for example, or to customers, and you have consumers that can independently consume that as if it were an API, as if that data is a product. And so in Showpad, what we've done is we've aligned our producers and consumers onto accounts. So at the bottom, you'll see our producers. So you'll see marketing, generating ad information. You'll see RevOps, generating CRM information. You'll see an engineering teams, generating Jira or product information. And in order to make that data available, we're using lake formation and our data lake, our data mesh, to automate access to our consumer accounts. And so I've highlighted our internal reporting account, just to highlight that we have one single account where our QuickSight lives for internal reporting for our employees. And next to that, you can see that we also have different accounts for our products. So if you want to make dashboards available to customers, that's actually separated into different accounts. We also have a data science account, for example, to do data science experiments, and a whole bunch of other accounts for doing transformations so that consumers can also become producers in turn. The next thing I want to highlight is just the simplicity of our querying layer. So whenever, as a user, I want to query something in QuickSight, it just goes through QuickSight, then through Athena, lake formation, and then straight into our data lake. The great thing about this is it's a whole serverless setup. So for our use case, this is definitely not for everyone, but for our use case and the size of data that we're dealing with, this is actually giving us a 10x improvement in costs versus using a data warehouse. So we're very happy about this and probably going to stay with this for a while until we see like a massive explosion in our data. Obviously, I understand that for some applications, there's a more business critical requirement, and in those areas or those dashboards, we're actually falling back on Spice. So we can always fall back on Spice for dashboards or applications that really need to go and deliver that data fast. The second thing I wanted to highlight is that notion from idea smile of the customer. And that's something that QuickSight, as a product offering, does extremely well. So imagine I'm an employee at a company and I have a great idea, and I want to bring up my analysis and I want to scale it to customers, right? How do I do that? So you start off with something like QuickSight Q. You come to the office, you enter your business question, you start exploring what kind of data we have in the company. So this is great because I don't need to know SQL. I can just use human language, and I can really focus on the business question, which is the question that you as an end user, you want to have answered. Then when I've got my story in my head, I can now start creating that in an analysis. I can prototype it. I can share it with customers. I can get feedback from those customers. I can change and update my dashboard. And finally, using embedding, I can bring that into our product and scale it out, right? And that's super useful, right? I can add also context to those dashboards so the user understands how to interpret that data. And this is the case for So I'm showing here the example of embedding a dashboard, but you can also embed QuickSight Q. And that's something we've done recently, and I wanted to show that to you as well. So one thing, just taking a step back, this is Showpad. You can see the QuickSight Q bar on the landing page on top. And I'm going to run the video in just a second. But I want to take a step back at why our users would want to have this. So for our users, it's super important when they come to Showpad to understand, OK, I've uploaded a file, I've uploaded a piece of content, and I want to know how many salespeople are using it. I want to know what the adoption is of that file to understand, OK, is this something should I invest more in this? Should I make some more noise about this, right? So if I can run the video, there we go. So if I'm an admin, I just go to QuickSight, to Showpad, and I start typing in adoption. And the great thing about QuickSight Q is that it also indexes the values in your columns, right? So you can search for a part of a file or file name and instantly get that file name in front of you, and you can start seeing the adoption. You can start seeing, OK, like which user is really adopting this the most. And I can change my visuals because I want to make a nice story to my manager maybe very quickly. I can even pick another visual. And then finally, you can also share that from here, from the prompt, and get it in front of your colleagues, for example. So this is super great, something we recently added to our product. This took about a week to implement because of all the technical foundations we had in place for the dashboarding part. So the dashboarding and QuickSight Q use the same APIs underneath, which made it for us super easy to bring this into our product and show this to our customers. So let's dive into the technical part of that because that's really important as well. So this is our dashboard promotion flow. So again, let me repeat. In Showpad, you can, in your BI, create a dashboard and then promote that towards your customer, right? You can scale that to your customer. So how do we do that? So first of all, in your BI account, you have a data set and you have an analysis. We first copy the data set over, but the data set in our internal reporting account is anonymized. We don't want to give all our customer data to our employees. We want to make sure it's protected, it's anonymized. So when we get to our staging and production accounts, we want to add the metrics and the mechanisms to make sure we de-anonymize that and we make it available for the customer to use. So we add things like row-level security, and we also add spice, just to make sure that for our customers, they're getting the most performant dashboards. On the analysis side, we're using the template creation API to create a template from the analysis and migrate it over to the staging account. And once it's on staging or production, we replace the dashboard with the analysis with the new analysis. So it's a very simple flow. We do all this in our GitLab CI/CD, and we're using the standard SDK of AWS to do that. The last thing I want to show here is once you've updated and promoted your dashboard, how do we embed that in our application? So there we've created a private endpoint, a URL endpoint. And so as users talk to that endpoint, the first thing we do is we check with an authorizer Lambda whether you're allowed to watch or view that dashboard. The second thing we do is we generate that URL. So there's a bit of complexity there because you really want to optimize the performance there. So if it's the first time you're doing this, you obviously want to create a user, you want to create some IAM rules, and then you want to get that embed URL. But if you've already done that, we're actually using Dynamo to cache the user and the IAM role so that speeds up the whole generation flow. So, and this whole mechanism is to speed up the generation flow from 4 seconds to about 400 milliseconds. So last couple of words over here. What's been the impact of QuickSight on Showpad? So first of all, already talked about the performance. So we're seeing a huge performance gain just using QuickSight. And if we're using Spice, it's even 10x faster than what we had before. Also, we're seeing a drastic reduction in development time. Because we've got this dashboard promotion flow up and running, we can ship dashboards to production and to our customers from months to weeks now. Also, because during this process of rolling out, we've educated our teams, we're now seeing a 3x increase in dashboard development productivity. And hopefully next year, when everything has been migrated and everything's completely running on QuickSight and we've removed our legacy stack, we'll see something like a 3x increase on return on investment. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just have Devin come over and speak about Guardian now and their experiences.
Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Mills. I'm from Guardian Life. So a lot of people haven't heard of Guardian Life, but we're a 162-year-old mutual company. We offer a lot of services like short-term disability, vision insurance, dental insurance, annuities, investments. Throughout our history, we've offered services to over 29 million customers, and we're in the Fortune 250. So it's important to understand with such a long history and a wide variety of who our customers are. So we have employers that could be 25 lives, and we have tens of thousands of lives. And inside of those employers, we have multiple different personas. So you might have HR representatives, supervisor, benefit managers. We also have individuals. So anyone can come directly to Guardian, buy a policy, buy a product. And then we have providers. And providers, similarly to our employers, can be big or small, offer one service or multiple services. And then finally, we have our brokers. So the brokers who help sell our product to users, et cetera, are looking for analytics on how that's going, how their customers are performing. So some of the challenges that we heard from our customers are probably a lot of challenges that a lot of people in this room have faced. So in this world of analytics, we tend to overcomplicate. So too much content is overwhelming. I would rather ask than find it myself. And this is very true of a lot of our customers. So when we start to build 10 dashboards and 10 folders and allow customers just to come into a portal, they don't know where to look for information. They get overwhelmed quickly, and they just go to their account manager and say, please just send me this report. Rendering speed is slow. I want information in seconds. So there was a time where it was acceptable or expected that if a dashboard took 4 or 5 minutes, people would go grab a cup of coffee or do something else and come back and look at it. But what we've really heard from customers is it needs to be very fast. I don't want to wait. The next one is, it would be nice to have a personalized experience since you know what I care about. So in a day and age where we see from Amazon.com and others, what's relevant to me? You know my history, you know a lot about me, so please give me something that's personalized to me. And that really speaks to what content is relevant to me. So please don't just let me browse endlessly or try and search to find things, but show me what's relevant. And finally, what is the so what? Basic charts do not quickly surface insights. And I think this is a big one for a lot of people. People can interpret charts in different ways, and come up with different answers. So how can we actually point out what is new and different? So our past solution looked something like what a lot of people see. So large lists inside of a BI tool. We would directly link customers out to a BI tool, and they could search folders, browse folders, et cetera. And it was a very challenging navigation to get what they wanted. And the search just wasn't enough to consistently direct them to what they wanted. And then many, many charts. So challenging to find the insights, and the dashboards have too much content. So as we see when we develop a dashboard, we might put 10, 20 charts. We might think it looks very rich, but people, again, get overwhelmed by too many charts, too many dashboards. So when we set out to build a new app, we needed to pick a partner, and that's where we started to look at the BI vendors. And so why we chose QuickSight was for a variety of reasons. The first one being the embedded visuals. So we knew that we wanted an embedded app. We needed a seamless experience where people could browse throughout and go back to our other apps. The next one was auto narratives. So rather than presenting information like we have traditionally, put it into clear language, put it in a few sentences, highlight a few of the keywords or percentages of changes, and there's no interpretation to it. People get the message right away. The next one is speed. Coming through an embedded analytic platform with the content, we needed it to render in seconds. And then anomaly detection. So this is the so what, right? So we can start to provide easily, go look at this day, or go look at this category, again, in a clear, natural language way that people understand and appreciate. And then finally, the partnership. So because of our complexities, we really needed someone was going to partner, listen, and then help build with us. And that's what we got from AWS, the QuickSight team and the ProServe team. So one of the examples is we had a very complex row-level security logic, and we needed OR logic inside of it. And that's something that we built together to really take this to a broader market. So this is a famous quote from Steve Jobs, and this is something that really we thought a lot about when we built this app. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end because once you get there, you can move mountains. And that was a key idea throughout this whole build. How can we make this more simple? How can we make it more clear for end users? And that's where we built a simple app. So this is what our app looks like. And inside of it, we can see, it doesn't look like what people think of traditionally when they think of BI apps or embedded analytics. And so what we do is throughout various pieces, using visual embedding, we embed pieces of our dashboards and our content into various parts of this app. So the first one is an example of an auto narrative with highlights. So here we've really looked at what this customer has and what we want to present to them. The next section is around the embedded pinning option. So any of this content, if a user likes it and they see it, they can pin it and it will always be there in the forefront. And then the final piece on this slide to really highlight is that when we presented this information, we can take hundreds of visuals and we put it through AWS Personalize, and then we present the top-ranked content. So rather than waiting for people to click things, we know who they are, we know what role they have at a company, we know their history of clicks, and we know their likes, dislikes, and pins. So we're actually going through our catalog and showing the top pieces of content that are relevant. So this is the personalized experience, right? No two people will have the exact same content or the exact same experience because of how we're rendering that content. And this is extremely helpful understanding the complexity of large versus small. What role do you play? What are you looking at? What's important? And the other kind of key feature is that we have that instantaneous feedback loop, not only to personalize, but to our team so that we can see what are people liking, what are people pinning, and offer that similar experience that they find in a lot of the other apps they use every day. So this is a screenshot of really what the app looks like. So in the top, you can see our primary app in the portal. And then from reporting and insights down, that's the app that we built. So you can seamlessly navigate between our app and the other apps. And because we built it this way, that allows us to embed any piece of this anywhere. So we can put only a visual, only an auto narrative anywhere we want throughout our site. It applies the same security, the same row-level security, the same personalized ranking. So we have that flexibility, which is really helpful to think about all the different customers we have and the different types. And because we embed, we can add detailed descriptions to help users. So we often heard, what does this report do? Like, what is its intended use? And because we're embedding the report, we have those descriptions that we can easily add. And then we can embed, on any one of the three levels with QuickSight. So we could embed a single visual, we could embed a single sheet, or we could embed a whole dashboard. So we have a lot of flexibility of how we can manage that content, which was a key piece of what we were looking for. So our architecture is pretty simple. Customers come from our general portal into our ECS container. At that point, we know who they are. We apply the RLS, get the recommendations from Personalize, which calls QuickSight, which gets its data from Redshift, which gets its data from EMR, and ultimately S3. So really, what's next? So with this app, we've received great feedback that we're now proactively offering that. But we have a few more places we really want to enhance. So the first one being paginated reports. I think like a lot of companies, paginated reports will be there forever, and it's an important thing to be able to offer that tactical information in a CSV and in Excel that people can just do system updates to payroll systems or timekeeping systems. So that's something that we're looking at building this year. The next one is embedded queue. So similar to how we could embed a single visual, we're looking at how can we do that same thing for queue. So maybe we have a member that comes in and wants to see their benefit summary. They could ask Q, what benefits do I have left this year? And we could quickly pull up just a single visual with all the security applied and say, here's your benefit summary for this year. And then finally, more personas. Because of the way that we built this app and it being independent, we want to scale this out to additional personas, including our internal personas. Because of the rich features of being able to dislike, pin, et cetera, that's very important for our internal users as well. So throughout this next year, we will start to add our internal teams, like our marketing teams, like our operations teams, so that they can also experience the same thing, and they're not also searching for that information.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Yaron. So across Yaron and Devin, across Showpad and Guardian, you've seen two very different slices of how companies from different industries have taken data for their customers and presented it in a very interactive fashion. Now, how can you do this? Well, partner with us. We have a number of ways in which we can help you take the data that you have, present it to your customers, and provide those interactive experiences. We have the community, which is a band of members who are passionate about QuickSight. Go to the community. You can ask questions. There are learning resources. There are examples that show you the art of the possible. There is a whole portal called Demo Central out there, which gives you all of that information. We have customer success programs. So to get started, we have the Embedded Analytics Data Lab. A data lab is a program where you can quickly get started with support from AWS. We also have the Powered by QuickSight program, so that once you have the POC built out, once you have your product built out, taking it to market is something that we can support with. So we have some support there in terms of training and resources that will help you get your product out. And then we also have a set of partners who can work with you in helping you build if that's better suited for your development model. So there are certified partners who can help you accelerate your embedded analytics journey. The information is on our website. The Embedded Analytics Data Lab specifically is actually a very easy way for you to get started. It is a 3 to 5 day engagement where you have 2 developers from your side who can sit with a solutions architect from AWS at no cost to get a proof of concept ready and going. So you come with an idea, you leave with a solution. There's a QR code out there that can help you get started with this program. Now, one last thing I'd like to mention before we close this out is that we are constantly working backwards from our customers. So at QuickSight, we have been innovating over the years. We started out with the core serverless architecture on which all of this is built. And over the past 5 years or so, we have constantly added features. Features ranging from the ability to deploy QuickSight at scale for a large number of users, ML insights, which Devin talked about with anomaly detection, forecasting, and all those capabilities. Q that Yaron talked about, where you can ask questions of data. And this year, we added the serverless paginated reporting piece to let you bring in paginated reports, data extracts to the cloud. And we also added visual embedding so that some of those examples you saw look very different from BI dashboards. Because you can now take the snippets that really matter to you, embed them, and again, not have to worry about the back end. So we've had over 80 features launched in 2022, and there's more coming. We're not done. And we will continue to do this. We will continue to innovate on your behalf so that you can take these to your customers. So to close today's session, I do have some key items I want to point out. One, it is easier than ever before to create personalized, interactive experiences for your customers. So there has never been a better time to start. QuickSight offers you speed in terms of building, speed in terms of deploying, and speed to scale. And of course, performance for all of your users so that they can see that in your application. QuickSight is unified BI at hyperscale. So we talked about a number of different use cases. You saw some of those in action. All of that is available to you in one product that consistently scales to meet your needs. We have tools and programs to make you successful, ranging from training to the Embedded Analytics Data Lab to the Powered by QuickSight program. So come talk to us. And we are always innovating on your behalf. So you saw a list of features that were launched this year. We continue to do that year after year to make sure that you have what you need so that you don't have to build those. You can use what we're building and then add value to your applications. Now, if you are still around, the expo is still open. We have a booth where we have more demos. There's swag, so please do visit the QuickSight booth at the expo. We also have a session. We have a session about optimizing your AWS cost and usage with QuickSight dashboards. This is at the Encore. It's a very engaging session. We have Dolby Laboratories speaking with us. So please do visit if you have the time. Again, all of those insights can also be embedded. QuickSight dashboards, visuals can be embedded wherever you need them to be. And join the QuickSight community. So if you haven't, we've got lots of resources there, like I mentioned. And finally, thank you. Thank you for being here. I know it's lunchtime, so really appreciate the time. And thank you. Have a good read, man.